What is up, guys? 7-0 Savage here. Today we are starting a brand new project, and that is the tall cabinet inside the van. If you are new to the channel, we have been converting this van right here into the ultimate zombie apocalypse survival home. We are doing this 100% DIY and documenting the entire process along the way. So if you want to see how this zombie apocalypse build unfolds, slap that subscribe button below. Let's go ahead and get into it. In the last video, we built this galley unit right here. Definitely check that one out. I love how this thing turned out. But in this video, we are going to be building out this tall cabinet right here. Now this tall cabinet is a pretty girthy lad. It's almost 22 inches wide, and at the bottom it's over 24 inches in depth. The plan is to break this tall cabinet into a few different parts. On the bottom here, we're gonna have a couple of our utilities. We're gonna have one of the components of our air conditioner down here. We're gonna have our diesel heater. I'm very excited for this tall section in the middle here. This is gonna be a full-on closet. We can keep all of our high-quality t-shirts nice and wrinkle-free. Above this middle section, we have my favorite cooking device of all time, the microwave. And then above that, we have a second component to our air conditioner, which is the evaporator. So this air conditioner is absolutely insane. It is from a brand called Cruise and Comfort. They specifically engineer these 12-volt air conditioning systems for like vans and boats. They're engineered to take a low amount of power, run directly off your battery system, and still provide house-like comfort inside the van. The system that I got is the VES-L. The first part is this condenser fan right here. Now, this actually goes underneath the van, which is really cool because this is the part of the air conditioner that creates all of the condensation and usually ends up dripping water when it's being run in hot and humid temperatures. The fact that this is underneath the van, all of that condensed water that's dripping is gonna go onto the ground rather than through our roof and onto our foreheads. This is the compressor unit that we're gonna put on the bottom of the tall cabinet. And then we have the blower slash evaporator, which we're gonna put in the top part of the upper cabinet. You can see that massive 4-inch duct. We're not actually going to be installing and making this air conditioner work in this video. We're just going to be making the space for it. If you want to see the installation video on this air conditioning unit, slap that subscribe button. I already know that's going to be a lengthy one. So the first real project we have is putting a drawer in this section right here. As for drawers, what I use is Bloom drawer slides because they look really, really nice. They're really high quality. They're undermounted drawer slides, so you can't see them from the top. As for the plywood that we're using for this project, we have this awesome looking pre-finished maple plywood. It's pre-finished on both sides. It's super, super lightweight. It's about 20 to 30% lighter than the heavier varieties of plywood like Baltic birch. Let me know if you guys would be interested in an entire video on how to use Bloom drawer slides. Could be up for making one of those if there's enough interest. In order to attach these Bloom drawer slides, I used bolts where you're supposed to put screws. I just drilled out those holes a little bit bigger, and then I just used a regular angle bracket into the 80-20. I did have to grind down the heads of the 5/16 bolts in order for them not to rub on the sides of the drawers. So now that our drawer box is good, it's time to put those horizontal slats that are actually gonna hold the weight of the stuff that we're putting in that cabinet. Although this is an extremely simple task of just creating flat boards, these are 3 failed attempts right here. First one, I had some tear out because I was using the jigsaw and I had the nice face up. It was just a silly mistake. This one right here, it's very close to being a square, but it's not quite. It's 21.5 in width and 21 in length. And I had it rotated the wrong way when I cut these things in it. Boneheaded. So what I did is I traced this one onto here. And when I traced it, since it was the 21 side on the wrong dimension, I cut these things too darn deep. Another boneheaded mistake. I literally just did the same mistake a 4th time in a row. What the heck, guys? So to summarize, I've been getting absolutely dingled on making these boards. So this is a lesson that I've actually learned from gaming. But if you start getting into that downward spiral of making mistakes and you start getting more and more frustrated, gamers call that getting tilted. When you're tilted, there is nothing that can untilt you except for just quitting. It's important to just take a break. In my case yesterday, I just called it. It was only 3 p.m. I still had a couple more hours of sunlight and I was like, screw it, I'm done. I'm going inside, I'm gonna drink a beer, play some video games, hopefully not get tilted doing that, and then I'm come back tomorrow. You know how YouTubers do giveaways? I should just do giveaways for the stuff that I make mistakes on. I have so much extra material. Giveaway this week is 3 small, randomly cut pieces of plywood and a rusty old drill press. We finished all 3 of the shelves, finally. I think we have more scraps than we do successful pieces. Not only do they fit great, but they're really, really strong. The way that we attach the plywood is similar to how we attach the butcher block countertop. We have a regular 80/20 L bracket here that's just bolted into the extrusion like it normally would be. And then we used big screws, I think these are number 14 screws, up into the plywood that holds it very securely in place. Next up, we are gonna do all of the exterior panels, starting with the hard ones. So this scribe tool right here is actually a modification of what I saw on Greg Virgo's channel. Virgo, not sure how to pronounce it. He has another awesome van building channel. Definitely check his content out if you're building your own van. He basically taught us to build a scribe tool with a point at the end on a block of wood so that we could drag it along the curve that we're trying to scribe out and recreate that curve perfectly onto a template. Now the modification that I made is I used a curve on the tip. That curve is going to account for slight turning of this scribe tool. That's just human error as we're dragging it along the curve that we want to scribe out. And since the pencil is in the center of that circle, even if we turn it a little bit, it's going to be equidistant from the surface that is pushed up against. Start out with your piece of cardboard, which is anchored to a square surface. In our case, the top of the countertop, we know that's perfectly level. We have the cardboard pushed down to that perfectly straight line. We've taken a guess at the curve. We haven't scribed anything yet. We take our scribe tool, we stick it up against the surface, and then we just drag it all the way to the top. And we're left with a line on this template that we can cut out and will be perfectly matching the curve that we just scribed. Easy as that, we have ourselves a perfect scribe of this corner. It's important to not try and do both of these curves at the same time. You're gonna have a nightmare situation where you run out of cardboard real quick. Better do one at a time and just tape them to each other. If you're a perfectionist like I am, once you get the curve really close, take your pencil, keep it flat against the surface, and just drag the pencil itself along the line, and you're gonna get an absolutely perfect curve. Next up, we are going to trace this template onto our 1/4 inch maple. I was smart and bought the unfinished version this time, and we're gonna cut her out. Whew, long day of work today, but we finished all of the static panels on this cabinet. That includes this wall here. Ignore the second holes back there. Those were indeed a mistake. We've got this side over here all the way down to the bottom. We have a static panel in front of the utilities on the bottom there. And then we have a static panel at the top here that's going to be in front of the AC unit. Finally, we have these skinny ones that go down the sides that match the skinny ones on the galley unit. We also got our microwave in. I thought this orientation with the door facing that way would convince me to be a little bit more healthy because I got to sneak my food in this crack here. The last thing that I did, as I was walking up and down this hallway, I ran into this corner right here about 15 times, and same with that corner. So I did an 1/8 inch roundover on both this corner on this side as well as this corner on this side. So now, at least when you run into it, it's more of like a bruise rather than a slice. Speaking of slice, I'm making some pizza tonight. See y'all mañana. Today's project's gonna be pretty fun. We're working on these last 2 faces here, and they are the most challenging ones. These are going to be doors. For these doors, we are gonna be using SOSS hinges. They're invisible hinges. They have a really clean look after they're fully installed. The downside is they're pretty challenging to install well. The reason they call these invisible hinges is because they sit recessed into both panels, both the door and whatever the door is hinging on. We're using a couple of different tools for installing these hinges. The first one is a bushing that's attached to our router. We're using an upcut 1/4 inch router bit. We're using this template made by SOSS specifically for this model of hinge. I screwed this piece of 3/4 inch wood to the back of it so that I can clamp it to each one of the surfaces, and therefore I won't damage them with nail holes. Other thing I learned, different 1/2 inch plywoods are different thicknesses. Part of the reason it took me so long is I was using scrap pieces of Baltic birch and scrap pieces of maple, and every single time I switched between them, it would have a different result, and I was super confused. Keep that in mind if you're working with plywood in general. I think that's a pretty good thing to know. The main reason I'm using these SOSS concealed hinges as opposed to like a Bloom cup hinge, those soft close ones that you see in nice kitchens, any of those cup style hinges require a 3/4 inch door, and we only have 1/2 inch doors here to save weight. Jiggity check it, y'all. We got the door for the microwave. These things are insanely hard to install, guys. The margin for error is nothing. Next up, we are moving to the closet doors, which are the most challenging ones. Gonna do a little experiment. So stoked, guys. Our experiment worked out the first time around, which I can't say happens very often, but check it out. We got this door, which opens up like that. A standard cabinet would kind of have two doors that open out from the center. I thought that solution would be a little bit awkward here because you're kind of approaching it from the side, and like having a door open into you is a little bit strange. Having one big door was going to be hard because the bed is going to stick out to like right here, and so the door would only be able to open like 45 degrees. I thought this was the best solution because I could still have room for the door to open a full 90 degrees. In fact, I'll probably have a little bit more, and it's just one motion to open this whole closet. We got all the faces done on this cabinet. It is now time to move on to finishing them. We want this thing to match the aesthetic of the galley unit, so we are going to paint all of these faces white. Finishing these panels is super easy, and it is exactly the same thing that we did in the galley unit. First, we're going to sand them all down. We're going to apply Bondo wood filler to any of the mistakes that we made. We're then going to start the painting process by using 1 coat of primer and 2 coats of this paint. So no surprise here, we do have a couple of issues on our hands. There are 2 things that have gone wrong. Thing number 1, on these 1/2-inch panels that were the pre-finished maple plywood, I sanded off the finish and painted on top of them. Looks like I didn't sand off the finish well enough because I can scratch this paint off with the fingernail. I just heard that the woodworkers who use this Garnica lightweight maple plywood with the pre-finish on both sides, they'll wipe with a cloth that has acetone on it, which is usually a huge no-no on any finish, but this stuff is strong enough that it doesn't affect it. Downside of that is when it comes to removing that finish, or when you want that finish to be gone, it's very, very hard to do. For all of the 1/2-inch panels, we're basically going to remake them, start over. I'm gonna go buy different plywood. But wait, that's not all. For all of the 1/4-inch panels, we're seeing bubbling. This is not the paint that's bubbled here. This is the veneer, the top layer of veneer on the wood. And I just had a lengthy conversation with one of the employees at Mount Storm about why this could happen, and it was actually fascinating. The glue that they use nowadays is a soy-based glue. It's not nearly as strong as the glue that they used to make plywood previously, and it's very finicky as far as open times when they're putting together these plywood panels at the factory. It sounds like they make batches of roughly 10 sheets of this stuff at a time. So when they glue all the veneers, the board that was glued up first is sitting there for the 10 minutes or so that it takes to glue all the rest of the boards before they press all of them. If any mistakes at all happen, or Joe at the factory gets lost in a conversation with one of his coworkers during that process, the bottom sheet is going to have sat there for way too long, and it's going to have faulty portions of where the top layer is glued to the boards. So I really nerded out on this stuff. What that means for us right now is that we are also going to remake all of the 1/4-inch panels. It is now time to start Tall Cabinet Round 2. I'm gonna skip through this. I'm gonna remake all these boards, and they're gonna be done right now. Okay, we're done. Took us about a week. Now, mind you, I still work full time. We fixed all of our problems. The 1/2-inch plywood, I used a 5-ply maple plywood. It is similar to the lightweight pre-finished ply we were using before, but it's not pre-finished, and the core, instead of being a poplar core, it is a fir core, so it's a little bit heavier, but it's not even close to as heavy as something like Baltic birch. And then for the sheet that delaminated, it was simply just one defective sheet. We got the exact same 1/4-inch maple plywood. One realization that I came to is I absolutely hate cutting mortises in 1/2-inch plywood, especially the 3/8 mortises that you need for the SOSS hinges. I almost threw these boards into the forest about 10 times just trying to cut these. It is finally time to reap the rewards of our efforts. Let's put these bad boys into the van and see how they look. This is the moment where it's like, if something else goes wrong, definitely gonna be throwing a tantrum. Dang, y'all, that is what she looks like when all the panels are on. Pretty stoked with how it's looking so far. I do have to say I'm pretty happy that all the panels fit as they were expected to. The last thing that we have to do is actually put the handles and latches on these, because as you can see, there is nothing holding them shut. As for latches, I'm using these right here. They are made by a company called RV Labs. I talked about all of the different types of latches that I considered in the video for the galley unit, so check part 2 of the galley unit out if you want to see the full latch review. The way that these things work is when you pull the handle, the little latching mechanism comes down, and when it's up, it catches on this catch, which you install on the inside. We installed the latches and catches and grabs in a few different ways for this cabinet. First, we have the drawer, which was the most standard. It has the regular RV Labs latch on it, which I did have to cut a piece out of the drawer for. And then down under here, it has the RV Labs catch, which we had to grind down. That's actually similar to what we did on the butcher block here, since we only had a certain amount of space. Now this next one drove me a little bit crazy, and I did make a few mistakes while I was doing it. What I'm talking about is the closet here. What I ended up doing was adding a couple of magnetic latches, one right here and one right here, that magnet to this catch and that catch. They have a, I'd say, light pull strength to them. This cabinet naturally wants to hang out in like this position. This was actually my first idea, believe it or not, so I should have just gone with my gut. Instead of just installing these two magnets, I did try to Forstner bit out 2 holes here and put 2 magnets with countersink screws into each side, hopefully securing this thing nice and flat. That didn't end up working, so we ended up with a pretty simple solution here. You need something that allows for lateral movement and can stick. That's why I had to go with magnets. These are super cheap and they're actually pretty good build quality. I'll put a link to these in the description below. Good old China products off Amazon. For this pull, what I did was just grind off the back of one of the RV Labs. There was something so painful about grinding off the smallest tidbit of a $30 latch. I came up with this Play-Doh trick for figuring out exactly where to install latches on both sides of the doors. For this microwave cabinet here, I've already installed the back portion of the latch. I'm just going to attach the magnet to it right here. What you do is you take your glob of Play-Doh, you put it just about where that catch is going to line up with the door. Make sure it's nice and stuck onto the surface so it holds itself in place. And then you simply take the door, you press it a little bit into the catch, and when you pull it back up, you have the exact spot to drill those 2 holes into the face on this side. I know that you can just measure on both sides and get pretty close, but I find that this way provides maximum precision. For cases like this, it can also be hard to do the measurements without the Play-Doh, because you have to measure the distance from the top and the distance right to left. Plus, on this channel, we are sponsored by Play-Doh. Not actually. That would be kind of weird. You can also use the Play-Doh trick for other things. I need to find the location of that bolt sticking out on the back of this angle bracket, so I just put some Play-Doh on the back of it, and I'm just literally going to push it up against the bolt. And then moving up to the microwave cabinet, there are a couple things to cover. First off, we got the magnetic latch that you guys just saw with the Play-Doh trick. Next up, it obviously holds itself open at quite a sharp incline. That is due to this Bloom compression arm thingy. I also considered using one of these. These are the gas strut version. There's pros and cons to both of them. Pros to the Bloom, they're a little bit better build quality. You can have it hold your cabinet at a much higher angle, whereas the maximum degree on this one is about 120 degrees, so almost flat, which would make it a little bit awkward getting in here. These bad boys are much cheaper, and they also hold the cabinet shut. So when the cabinet is closed, you don't need a magnetic latch like this. Bloom's also adjustable compression, which I liked. I'll put a link to both the gas compression strut as well as the Bloom arms in the video description below. By the way, this is the exact same microwave that I used in my last fan. It also happens to be the smallest overall width microwave that I could find anywhere on the internet. It's only a 700 watt, I believe, but it cooks food really well for being so low power. I obviously still have to mount it. I'm going to use these screws on the side and just do an angle bracket into this wood. Last thing that we had to do for this cabinet involves the handle on the front. So you see how it matches that handle as far as how it looks. We literally just cut off a piece of stainless steel with the grinder here, and then we did a 90-degree bend in the back so that we were able to screw it to the face of the cabinet, and therefore it matches the same kind of waterfall aesthetic of all of the rest of the latches that we have. Once again, not the most efficient way to make a latch, but I really care about aesthetics. So believe it or not, guys, we are 100% complete with this tall cabinet here. I'm really stoked with how this thing turned out. It is lightweight, strong, and in my opinion, it looks pretty darn good. It definitely took way more work than I anticipated, which holds true for just about every single project I've ever done in a van. It doesn't help that we had to redo all the panels twice. Don't click away just yet. I'm gonna show you guys this completed project. If you're not yet a subscriber, slap that subscribe button below. It really motivates me to keep making better and more content. If you did like this particular video, slap that thumbs up button below. It always helps me improve my feeling of self-worth. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.